right. Good morning, Mike Ritsema here with i3 Business Solutions and Brian Abraham, our Chief Technology Officer. And today we're going to get straight into what we learned about remote work from COVID-19, the pandemic, the last 3 months and the drama in the world and America. And you know that I like to pause for just a minute and say, what are we trying to do here? Because i3 Business Solutions is a technology company. We love the technology. But let's just pause and say, what are we trying to do in business? And certainly in this context, working remotely. And that is what every executive, what every owner is interested in is 4 things. And that's being more productive and efficient. Can we do that in a remote environment? Being profitable, sustainable, paying the bills. How can I be different than the other guys? And then managing risk, managing security. Brian will get into that. But business results, that's what we're looking for. And all the remote work, all the technology is really cool, but we have to figure out how to deliver business results. So we're going to talk about this from 2 perspectives, a technology perspective, Brian will get into that, and then from a business perspective. So I'll turn it over to Brian right now for what he's learned from coronavirus and the pandemic.
Thanks, Mike. So how do we get all of those business results out of the home office? So getting from the workspace, meetings, cubicles, all that paper to a laptop on your desk at home. So we've got a lot of challenges that revolve around the technology, right? We've got the equipment that we're using. We've got our business applications that we're trying to get to. Everybody's business apps are a little bit different. We got to keep people connected from home in a reliable way and keep things secure. That was unfortunately a little bit of an afterthought as a lot of companies scrambled to get people connected. So, you know, not all of our business apps are equal, and even within your own company, you'll find many different types of apps. Some of them are going to be cloud native. Some of them are going to be never going to the cloud ever, like your classic green screen there. So cloud apps probably moved pretty easily. They can be accessed from basically any connected device. Could be a tablet, iPad, even your phone, right? So we use Office 365, Teams, SharePoint. You can edit documents on your phone if you need to. Those things moved very easily. Some of those other ones require a lot of infrastructure to keep them connected. So VPN, you got to have the software, you got to have something that you're connecting into, a lot of technical measures to keep that stuff working. And not everybody requires the same apps. So you might have office staff that require a certain set of apps, maybe marketing department or production, CAD designers. Depending on what your business is, not everybody needs the same connectivity, the same tools. So you kind of got to look through it through that lens and give the right groups, departments, the tools they need to be connected. Securing. So a lot of companies have hopefully put a lot of effort into securing their networks, spend a lot of money, firewalls, policies, antivirus software, anti-malware, anti-phishing, monitoring everything so that you know what's happening. You know when there's a problem on the network, when there's been an intrusion. Home office security, kind of the Wild West. So you don't know what people's home office computer has got on it, if it's secure in any way. So the easiest way to provide security for someone at home, send them home with a company device. Modern security products can follow that device and secure it when it's at home. So at i3, we use a couple layers of software that keeps that device monitored. It keeps the security software updated. It keeps it patched. And it extends some of those office security features to the home, even DNS security and anti-phishing measures. A lot of companies are converting to laptop usage because of that. So, you know, we had a few clients that said, you know what, we're gonna switch our purchasing policy from desktops to laptops just to allow us that additional flexibility. And you know, one thing you want to be careful of that some companies had a knee-jerk reaction to was installing VPN on home user computers, so their home PCs. And we strongly recommend against that if you don't understand the security ramifications, because that creates a connection, a tunnel from the home computer to your office network. So if you don't have control of that home computer, if you're not aware of the security on there, you're creating a vulnerability that can affect your workplace. Now, you can use a home computer with certain remote access controls. So it's not being written off completely. So if you're remoting in using something that has multi-factor authentication, where you're just viewing a screen that's at your workplace, then you're not storing any data, you're not transferring any data to that home computer. So it's much less of a risk to connect that way. Ergonomics, yeah. So everybody's in a different place with this. Some people have got a nice home office, others are not so lucky. So biggest thing is establish a functional workplace. And even if you don't have the best workplace, mix it up. Find a space that you can have some privacy. Find a place where you can create some boundaries. I know a challenge is, kids at home, right? So I was lucky, my kids are a little bit older. They were doing virtual schooling at home. I really only saw them at lunch.
Yeah, well, I happen to know that Brian's worked his kids hard during homeschool, so I feel bad for him.
Well, I mean, it worked out well just to set a schedule, create boundaries, set up rules. It worked well. People with young kids, that's going to be more of a challenge. But establish some policies. Close door between these hours. Create some boundaries to separate that work and home space. Stay active. So I know if you don't have a lot of interactions at home, you can kind of melt into your desk and not leave it for the day. And that's not good really for your physical or mental health. You got to get up, move around. You might not be going up the stairs anymore like you did at the office. You're not going down the hall to meetings. You're not walking up to people to chat with them. So you have to kind of go out of your way to kind of stay active and keep moving. And that'll help avoid the virtual meeting fatigue. A lot of people have heard about the Zoom fatigue, and that was very real. I know a couple of heavy days on online meetings, and you can start to feel that drain. It's more taxing for some reason, not being able to connect with people on a human level. Mike's going to talk a little bit about that, but one of the things is phone calls instead of chat. Chat's a wonderful thing. It's very efficient, but it can also be fatiguing when you can more efficiently knock something out with a 2-minute phone call than you can with 10 minutes worth of chat back and forth. So,
yeah, ergonomics was good for me, Brian. The office was virtually empty here, so I had the opportunity to work in any space I wanted. And I'm old school, I'll get into this later, but sitting in a desk is what I do. And so the ability to have a stand-up desk and try one in the office here, and then at home I'm stuck in that chair for hours. I found myself working at the kitchen counter, so varying the ergonomics.
Yeah, mix it up. Hey, Mike.
Yeah, so let's talk about what I learned, the ahas. And I'll talk about this from a baby boomer perspective, a traditionalist. I'm a traditionalist who has gone to work for decades. So I'm kind of talking about my experience here. And the first aha was remote work works. My goodness, it went seamlessly at i3 Business Solutions, and the productivity stayed there. So what that means is that our cloud and business continuity plan was flawless. I was frankly quite impressed myself, maybe a little bit surprised. But we were able to move to that home productivity due to the fact that we were using Teams voice. We were one of the first in West Michigan to use Teams voice over IP in the cloud for over a year and a half. So when we moved to the home office, our communication using Teams voice, support, etc., went really well. Susan Smith from Jarvis Handling said that she found she tweaked her organizational system. She had to reorganize a few things. I think a lot of us have done that, and certainly at i3, we've tuned some things also. But work at home works for i3 Business Solutions. Maybe one of the biggest ahas comes from this book, which I'm reading. It's written in kind of a blog format. It's almost a compilation of blogs, it appears, by Jason Fried with 37 Signals. His company is now called Basecamp, right across the pond in Chicago, remote, and I think the book affirmed a lot of what I experienced. And one is, talent is everywhere. I think we're certainly, I say, we limit our companies to talent within 30 to 45 minutes of the office. That's how we hire people, right? You need to come to the office. The aha for me is that remote work works. And, therefore, the whole United States of America, maybe the world, become available for talent for a business like ours. We certainly understand that manufacturing, distribution, retail, healthcare, many industries, and certainly ours, we've got techs going on site and so on, that there are limitations to that. But for a lot of work, remote work works, which opens the talent pool up substantially. And the fact that we could go remote and that I have techs here that I haven't seen for 2 to 3 months is a revelation for me. It's a new experience. It's an aha moment. Secondly, if there was a context that when you come to the office and you're here for 8 to 10 hours, and my goodness, you even work till 6:15, I'm impressed. Does time equal results? And no, results do not equal time at the office. Certainly that's clear now. And the ability to measure those results rather than the time put in at the office is another reality. We have those measurements, we have those answers. So that's an aha moment for me. And Matt at Bridgepoint Wealth Management said he was amazed at how efficient he could be with Zoom meetings, where an hour meeting sometimes only took 15 minutes. But I'll talk about this later. He's concerned about the relational part of his relationship with clients. And that's a reality I think we're all dealing with. But certainly the fact that working remotely does work, and we can measure the results. We're interested in results, aren't we? Rather than working 8, 9, 10 hours and being at the office till 6:15 p.m. Another aha that's in the book and clearly stated in the book as asynchronous communication. Again, my experience, baby boomer, is if you want to work through an issue or a challenge, you get people in a room, 3 people, 6 people, 8 people, I don't know. But you have a 1 hour or 2 hour meeting, you whiteboard it, and you put your issues and work through it. Maybe it's 2 or 3 meetings for an hour or 2, and that's how we work through issues, right? Well, that can be done asynchronous. That is through chat or through a team. And maybe that idea comes to someone at 7 p.m. and they throw it into the communication on the subject. So moving from a synchronous, everybody in a room, heads down, have to figure this out, to asynchronous is a new experience. And I think a lot of us are experiencing that, the ability to work through issues in chunks and bits through our platforms. Amy at On-Site Wellness said, communicate, communicate, communicate. That is changing, and going asynchronous is a different way to communicate. We don't have to gather around a room. Mark Peterson at MFP Automation, the ability to communicate internally and externally. Every meeting there is a Teams and maybe a physical, but includes a Teams portion to the meeting, so that if you're virtual, you can just join in on the conversation in the meeting. So moving from synchronous, we all have to be in the same space at the same time, to asynchronous is a new way, a different way to work through issues and challenges. I think the whole nation is talking about office space, what's going to happen to downtown New York City, what's going to happen to office space, and we're experiencing it here at i3. I mean, we are growing here, we're filling this office up, and we're looking at expanding in our business, except we put in a home office policy where you can work at i3 from the home office 2 days a week. And that means we need, somewhere around 30 to 40% less office space. That will save us money physically. we're reconsidering what that looks like. I know of 2 businesses minimum right here on the west side of Grand Rapids that have nobody coming to the office right now. Productivity maintains steady. So things are changing dramatically at I3 and for a lot of us with office space and that perspective. But the challenge is, and I see it, and I am a strategy guy, I'm a planning guy, an operational guy, but Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We've all heard the phrase, and I like the little add-on here, and technology for lunch. But we love the technology, and the technology works, and that is exactly the challenge. Is, you know, people, proximity, the relationships. I like the way Dwayne at Culver CPA Group said it, and I think what a lot of us experienced this, that the pandemic, the crisis brought us together. And a lot of us are working with and moving through, we still have some paper around and moving all that to computer and the ability to work online and remotely and collaborate. It's wonderful to work from almost anywhere. But he says, we lose the casual interpersonal dynamics of everyone being in the same room together. He says, I like working with other people around me. Me too. I like the people at I3 and I enjoy getting together with them. But this remote context changes culture. We haven't cracked the code. Pete put together a touch base Tuesdays at 11:45 in the morning. On Tuesdays, we all get together. We do team huddles virtually, but cracking the culture and maintaining that culture is the work we're trying to crack the code. If you've got ideas, you know, put them out there, get with us, we're interested. We haven't perfected that one. So that's it. Just wrapping up with, at I3 Business Solutions, we want to accelerate business results. We do that by integrating technology. You know, we talk about people and process and technology coming together. I just want to say again, we rail against islands and platforms. If you're running Dropbox and you're running Slack and you're running an email system and you're using Zoom, you've got 4 logins and information in a half a dozen different places. I challenge you to look at a system or a platform, something like Office 365, that all synchronizes together with SharePoint in the cloud and with a graphical user interface called Teams that makes it really easy to use and work together. That's the challenge we have with remote work. And we hope that you've learned something from us here at I3 Business Solutions with Brian and Mike. Grace, I'll ask you, any questions come in?
We have one question, and it says, at the beginning of the pandemic, our transition to remote work was a little bumpy. What would you suggest we do to be better prepared for the future?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because we've been talking about DR plans. We put one together here at I3 Business Solutions about 8 years ago, and finally we put it together. And but that is the challenge. It's amazing to me. We think about the fire, the earthquake, the flood, but the pandemic. I mean, the disaster comes in the form of a computer virus encryption, or now a physical health virus. So it seems like some sort of plan becomes, the context of the plan changes, right, Brian?
A lot of DR plans are getting modified because of that. Because yeah, you had provisions for, you know, moving to a different building. Maybe you even had an agreement where, you know, you could move to a different building. I know we had that in the event that back in the day when our building, if it were to be destroyed, we had the ability to work from somewhere else. Now, you know, technology's evolved. We have the tools that we can just kind of seamlessly move somewhere. But yeah, not a lot of people consider the possibility of the office is fully intact, but none of us can go there. We all have to be working from home.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's kind of evolving in the DR strategy as people are revising those. Certainly, you know, having a remote worker strategy in place ahead of time, those companies were much more easily to transition to this. The ones that didn't, you know, they kind of scrambled for equipment provisioning, right? Laptops were flying off the shelves. Companies that didn't have the right firewall, didn't have VPN capability for users that needed a VPN. And companies that had their own IT staff maybe didn't have the tools in place to patch systems, to monitor them, to remotely help and connect into all of their workers when they were now at home. They were used to walking up to their desk. Now they had a different strategy, or now they had a different issue to address. So a lot of those facets, planning, considering those would help ease that transition into remote work. And a lot of companies right now are looking at what didn't work so well and, you know, what's next. Because, you know, the fact is that this, well, it isn't over yet. So, you know, adjust, plan, and move forward.
Yeah, exactly. So a business continuity plan, we have a framework we can provide to you, and we can help you create that business continuity plan. Doesn't have to be a 100-page document, but a little bit of fundamental planning and organization can put us in a position to be prepared in the future. Any other questions, Grace?
No, that was all. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks. So we'll wrap it here with that is our perspective on what we learned from remote work in a coronavirus pandemic. You're welcome to contact either Brian or me at those numbers there or email address, and go out and get some work done remotely or on premise.